This is Melina Lee Williams-Haas. I deeply appreciate you listening and taking the time to hang out with me. I will be addressing issues of life, the universe, and everything that are often bogged down and mired in shame and grief, and talk about how they can be repackaged to be useful and gorgeous and fucking awesome for you. So sit back and relax, or you know what? Sit up and freak out. However you prefer to listen. Let's go.
Hello, Melina.
What is up?
What is up? So this episode is going to be the third episode of my new podcast, The Inner Work.
And the episode of All That and Mo.
Yay! It's a 2-for episode.
I have no idea what number I'm on. 70-something? 60-something?
Amazing.
I lost a couple months when I did the opera.
Right.
You want to talk about like rearranging your life? I really thought that I was going to have the bandwidth for it. And it wasn't that I didn't have the time. It was that I could not do it.
You're probably exhausted.
I was so mentally,
yeah,
it was just such a thing.
I'm so excited to talk with you for 1,000 reasons because, one, I could just listen to you talk all the time because...
Yay, me too. I mean, not me, but you. I could listen. I was listening to him so arrogant. She's like, I could listen to me for
totally
hours.
Listen to myself for hours.
Ironically, I can. I hate listening to myself.
But doesn't everyone?
No, absolutely the hell not.
Oh.
You know who loves listening to themselves?
Mr.
This one
Haas.
Austrian guy. He never gets tired of watching the documentary or hearing his shit. I mean, done well. He doesn't like it if it's not done well. But the rest of us are just cringing and like, oh my God, I can't.
But hearing your own work produced is one thing. Hearing your voice, I think, is another thing.
And it's because there's science. You can never actually hear your own voice.
Right, because something to do with the resonance in your head. The resonance in your head
changes the way you hear it. And so you have an idea of what your voice sounds like. No one else hears it that way. And when it's recorded, it will still not be the same because it's an electronic duplication of your voice that you're hearing still outside of your head.
Such a weird
Maybe
thing,
if you get one of those like jawbone, you know those mics that like vibrate your ear bones?
Weird.
Which I don't know how I feel about those.
No, I don't like it.
But anyway.
So anyway. Okay, so I haven't even told you what this podcast is about. So let me tell you. So, I've been doing the sexuality work, spiritual sexuality, whatever, for all these years. And I love the work and it's still very much part of me. But I've been feeling over the last few months something wanting to shift or change or expand. I don't know what it is yet. And I have given myself the summer. I've been calling it the summer of love. My last episode was the summer of love because I've had all these amazing guests coming to stay with me. Yeah. And I feel like they're all part of it in their own unique way, either because we have interesting conversations or they reflect something back to me or something. And so my previous years of work and business have been very grippy. I've been very like, my business must send me clients and that's how I'm going to do the work.
Grippy in terms of you holding tightly to it?
Yeah.
Or gripping in terms of it's gripping you?
No, me gripping it and demanding it be a certain thing to me.
Yeah.
And I think, long story short, that's ended up giving it a chokehold. And made me a bit limited. I'm not even beginning to share the magic that I have in the work that I've been doing. And so I wanted to start this podcast to document my own journey.
Oh, cool.
Of doing my own inner work to seeing what happens. And listen, this might end up only being 10 episodes. So I'm not gripping. But I wanted to also talk to people who I know do their own inner work and who also help other people do their own inner work.
Yeah.
And you, I know, do your own personal inner work. You're very out about it in the world. And you are the Kink Doula.
Dun, 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 dun.
You should DM.
I did. I should see if my patent application went through. I did. I applied.
Oh, yeah. You should. No, I meant for the jingle.
Oh. Kink Doula TM.
Dun, 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 dun. But so first of all, I want you to tell us what the Kink Doula is. And then also, I came at the weekend and saw you teach. And I know that kink is, I was going to say revolutionary. I guess it is revolutionary.
Absolutely. I believe it is.
And it is inner work. Like we might do things on the outside of someone's body, but it's so transformational. So can you tell us about your work as a kink doula? And then we'll talk about how kink is transformational.
First is Kink Doula, I will say, and I've talked about this a bit on the podcast before, but who cares? Because,
Oh, this is a different podcast.
Say it again. This is a new podcast.
New
This is also my podcast. So
yes, that one.
If you listen to my podcast, which is allthatandmo.com, called that specifically because I did not want to be trapped in just saying this is a podcast about BDSM, and what if one week I'm really on fire about some political shit that maybe is not directly specifically about kink, then you go off topic. I was like, I just want it to be my show about whatever the fuck I want to talk about. Kink Doula came about as an outcropping, actually a byproduct of the work that I was doing with Barbara Corellis, who was responsible for putting you in my life and me in your life.
That's right.
So many years ago at the Urban Tantra in London, in fact.
Yeah.
It's got to be like 10 years ago
At
now?
least, yeah.
Maybe even more. But basically, I was doing an exercise with one of the participants where we were doing some impact play in order to try to get her back into her body and creating a space where someone who had a great deal of chronic pain for many years could experience intense sensation and pleasure at the edge of pain and what that would be like for her. And her experience in that was so transformational for her that when she came to me the next morning, like glowing and in a space of saying, I have not been in a state of blissful enjoyment of sensation since the accident.
Wow.
And me and the other person who was involved in the scene, who was sort of, since if I'm spanking someone's butt, I can't necessarily have a good eye contact and monitor them as closely if it's a new person. So she had someone else who was sort of holding space and doing the eye gazing and all that like woo shit. And what was miraculous about it was that she just felt like she had really received a healing and space to be back in her own body. And then like, I just sort of tossed off like, yeah, I guess I'm some sort of like kinky doula or something. And then like lightning struck and I was like, oh my God, that is what I'm doing. That's it. I was like, I need to get the website. I need to fucking apply for a patent. I need to, do my shtick. And it was interesting because for so many years, so many people had said to me, are you a coach? Are you a consultant? And I never stepped into it because I was like, who am I to do that? I don't have a degree. I don't have the training. And I was like, what fucking training?
Yeah.
What training
you've
is
lived
there?
It for decades.
Right. And this is what everyone said. And so finally with this lightning strike of that idea coalescing into this is who you are in this practice, and then being in a space where people that I really liked and was getting to know really responded so instantaneously to it. Each and every person was like, holy shit, yes. Everyone was like, yes, yes, yes. Oh my God, yes, this is amazing. Some people were like, oh shit, I should have thought it. Like, I was like, yeah. Too late. I got the website. And so it has been really remarkable just in the opening movement of getting this launched and having like the first clients come through and realizing that despite the fact that I sit there like in the hours before, I'm going to talk to someone going, who the fuck do I think I am? I'm going to fuck up this person's life. I'm going to say some shit and it's going to work. And then afterwards I get off the phone and I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking doing it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And I feel so delighted. And I'm actually very inspired by seeing you go through the process of saying, yeah, I did that. And now I'm moving on to and expanding into an even broader category of people because so much of your work is specifically with men.
Yeah.
Right. And there's certainly healing that you have for the world. And it doesn't mean that you're going to abandon the men that you have been working with. It means that you are adding to, making more space for.
Absolutely. And I feel like, and you'll get this, the tools and skills and resources and things that we know about kink and conscious sexuality, I don't really have a better word for that. They're life skills. You said that in your class the other day. They are life skills. It's how do we communicate with each other well? How do we respect each other's boundaries? How do we ask for what we want? How do we be more present in our body and with our people? And it's all life skills. And I feel strongly, and I keep mentioning this, and this may not be the direction that my work goes.
Yeah.
I think it's the cutting edge of leadership. I think leadership, whatever that means, I don't know what that means exactly, need these skills. I think we need to be taking these skills into like companies and putting the whole cohort through it. We need to be getting like the people who work in the office and the CEOs and the lunch ladies and the janitors eye gazing. I feel like it's like, I think there's people doing it already. There's a great book called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership.
Oh my God.
that was written by three people.
So many commitments.
It's a lot of commitment.
I'm like, can I get like 5?
Yeah, you can. It is a lot. But the 3 people that wrote it trained with Gay and Katie Hendricks, and they were Tantra teachers. And they're doing all of that with corporate.
Yep.
So there's something that I can't quite put my finger on because it hasn't come to me yet.
People have been making incursions into this line because I had a friend who was a pro-dom for many years and had also come off of the corporate world for many years and was doing like executive pro-dom.
Right.
And not that she was beating people, but she was talking to people in leadership roles about how, as a dominatrix, what you are actually doing is nurturing your people and utilizing what turns them on to benefit you as their dom, as their top, as their whatever it is.
Right.
And so that idea is not alien entirely. The thing is that it's a matter of, and this is what people keep telling me, they're like, you need to reach like the rest of the world. I'm like, I know. It's great to talk to kinky folks, but kinky folks already have the beginnings of the idea about how critical communication is.
Right.
And the fact that power dynamics exist, period. They're there. You need to understand what's happening with them and utilize them effectively and compassionately and consensually, which is what so many fucking people don't fucking do.
Right.
Right? And that's where you run into the bad aspect of kink, which is being domineering instead of dominant.
Right.
Being abusive as opposed to being nurturing in what you're doing. And teaching people those skills in the context of kink and then saying, and here's how it relates to the rest of your life.
Exactly. Exactly.
Even if you don't get it. Like, I'm like, fine, I will tell you explicitly how this relates to the rest of your life.
Right. I always say your sex life doesn't sit in a vacuum. It sits in the context of your life, right? So if you are learning good boundaries because you're doing kink workshop or a tantra workshop or something like that, you're going to have better boundaries outside of there. It's going to click.
Yeah.
I mean, we should have been taught this at school, really, but we're not. So we have to go and learn it as adults.
Yeah, I will tell you, me who negotiated for salary increases after I'd had to go through negotiating kink scenes was entirely 100% not that person who was like, oh my God, can I even ask? And waiting months it would take me to even work up the nerve to be like, please tell me I have some more. Meanwhile, I'm like, this is what I'm doing for you. Let me show you on paper how awesome I am. And this is where I need you to show me love and respect. And the only way you can do so is with money.
Right.
Right? Like in a relationship, there's other ways, there's other love languages. The corporate love language is fucking cash.
Right.
So give me the goddamn cash.
Cough it out. That's right.
And taking that into the workplace was completely organic and it just flowed right through. It wasn't like I had to decide, oh, am I going to use my kink skills with it? No, it just fucking happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is the same thing that people who go to therapy for their whatever issues, they get better in the rest of their lives.
Right.
It's not like you're just working on your issues with your mom.
Right.
Right? You're doing that so that you can then walk through the world with more confidence, with more stability, with more joy, with less anxiety, whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
And that spills over into the rest of your life. And so for people not to think or not to fully understand how much fuckery is occurring because people are not having the sex that they want, because people are not having the intimacy that they desire, because people are not connecting in the way that they want.
Absolutely. And I think it comes down to a core human wound that is, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, that everybody has.
Yeah.
And then somehow we're supposed to spend our life figuring out that we are enough, something like that, but also help each other. And it's not because of what you have or what you do. And it's a bit cheesy, but I always say, who are you being? Who are you being in the bedroom? Who are you being with your lovers? Who are you being at work?
Yeah.
That's all it comes down to. What you're doing. There's a quote I read somewhere years ago that was, when you're on your deathbed, you won't care what you did for a living, and neither will God. You'll only care who you were being during your life. And that's what we teach. Who are you being? Who are you bringing to the bedroom? Who are you being in the bedroom? Or your life, or your other relationships? And all of that, here we go, seamlessly, takes me to the inner work.
Yeah.
What does inner work mean to you? I could say what I mean, but what does doing the inner work or inner work mean to you?
Well, for me, it had to start. It's interesting because I like to think about the fact that I've been doing the inner work so much more intensely since I got sober.
I mean, but getting sober takes inner work.
Right. But the reality is that I have always been an inner work person. A lot of the language that I utilize in order to try to describe my processes and the way I think to other people turns out to be very transformative. Like if I say to someone, well, you know, brain hamsters, and they're like, what do you mean by brain hamsters? I'm like, well, I have an entire flock of rodents. Right. And I talk to them and sometimes they do things. So if, for example, I'm like, you know what, I need to organize this trip to the UK in December. I'm like, these two brain hamsters, and they scamper up. I'm like, you guys need to remind me in a couple of days that I need to do X, Y, and Z. And then they're fine. They're on their little wheels going on the side. So this is how I visualize my internal process. And I thought that was normal. And then I found out from other people, they're like, yeah, I don't have conversations with rodents in my head. No. And I was like, oh, that's too bad because they're kind of awesome. Yeah. And then when I got sober, and then I started having conversations with a hyena, and then with this Hindu deity, and then with past iterations of myself, I started thinking, okay, I'm insane. But what was really going on was I was getting in touch with stuff that has been part of my process for my entire life, but I wasn't able to coherently speak about it.
Right.
And now I can. And so for me, the inner work is about taking the chaos of what's happening inside and not making sense of it, but accepting it and working with it.
Absolutely.
You know, so I can say, okay, I, for example, know that I have intrusive thoughts that I am prone to. What can I do to get past it? Like, and I'll try different things. I'll say maybe when I have the intrusive thought, I will take a shower. I will do something different. I'll jump around, get my body moving. And that didn't work. I'm like, okay, I'm going to write about it. And that didn't work. I'm like, fine. I'm just going to plunge headfirst, stick my face into and scream and fully experience the anger or joy or whatever the intrusive thought is. And I was like, hey, that actually works, which seems counterintuitive. I'm just like, get angrier, get madder, get so pissed off that you just can't deal with it anymore. And so for me, that inner work lines up with saying, who the fuck am I in here? What's going on? Even if it seems crazy. And when it does feel nuts, to accept it and say, great, this is what we're fucking working with.
And that's it. Owning all the parts of you that make themselves known, isn't it? And some of them can organize trips abroad. Yeah. And some of them are maybe thoughts that aren't even real thoughts, but you just have to indulge them for a little while till they're diffused, you know? And sometimes, like for me, I do a lot of, we were saying earlier, not on here, about
earlier in the default
in the
world.
Actual world, that I'm much more body based than mental based.
Right.
And so for me, a lot of my stuff that needs examining, you know, shit that comes up, shows up in my body. And so if I'm like, oh, there goes my back, I will go and get a massage or some body work. But before I do that, I'll kind of take my consciousness, my awareness into there and kind of listen to it and kind of rub it and listen and see what, does it have a message? Is it trying to tell me something? Is it something from the past? Did I just knock my body when I walked past the table?
Right.
You know, is there something going on? Is there a message for me? Or, you know, do I just actually need to go for a walk? You know, what is it? But I will always go in first because my body always tells me stuff before it's in my mind. Before it comes to my mental awareness, it's in my body's.
And it's so interesting because I am 180 degrees opposite of that. And then I look at Georg, who I'm constantly trying to process with and trying to keep
Melina's
up
husband.
With what? Oh, yeah. Some people might not know.
Yeah.
He is the spouse meister as well. And his life is entirely up here. He has pretty much vacated the body.
Right.
You know, he is just not present. And so when things are happening for him physically, he has no concept that perhaps it's a manifestation of some psychological shit.
Interesting.
Right? And I'm like, maybe your back hurts. Because I, for example, read an article about lower back pain being connected with childhood trauma. And Georg had just, for the first year of our relationship, he didn't mention that he just was constantly in some level of discomfort with his lower back. And I would, you know, I bust up the Hitachi for the alternate usage, and I'm, you know, doing massage, I'm sending healing energy, blah, blah, blah. But I will tell you, it didn't start to dissipate until I started helping him work on separating from his mother.
Right.
Right. Till I started saying to him, you know what? You don't actually have to send her flowers. She did nothing to earn those.
She absolutely did not.
And by the time we were well into that, I started asking him again about his back, and it was fewer and fewer incidences where he was aware of pain or he was even hindered by it.
Yeah.
And it is now something that is now not perpetual constant. It's like, yeah, if we have a shitty bed, he might wake up, his back's a little sore, or if he sleeps weird or picks up a suitcase the way I tell him not to. But the reality is that I have seen, and he has seen, how that psychological work has moved him from a physiological situation.
Right. It's all connected.
Yeah.
Before I even trained as a massage therapist, which was the first thing I ever trained as 27 years ago, because I'm very old, I was given a book. It's actually downstairs called Body Mind by a man named Ken Dickwald. It was the first time I'd ever...
Dickwald?
It was Dickwald, but D-Y-C-H.
Oh.
Yeah.
Dich.
I'm sorry.
As in love wall. Well, that means love.
Does it?
No, Liebe, dich. You. Dich is you. Ich liebe dich is I love you. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
I flipped up the words.
You can tell me I love you. But he, in this book, and so it'll be, if it was written when I read it, it's at least 30 years old. And it was probably not recently written.
Right.
And he kind of mapped out, if you feel something on your shoulder, are you carrying a burden? And if, you got an eye problem, what don't you want to see? And all this that kind of stuff, and saying how it all works. And you know something? I mean, it's 30 years old, but I still find almost that map is almost the same. Although I find different people manifest different things in different parts of their body.
Right.
So like you could follow a map of the chakras and say, if there's something in your heart, when did you have heartbreak? Or there's something in your sacral, what's going on with your creative flow or your sexuality or something. And I find more often than not, it maps out, but not always.
Really?
The thing I had to learn, actually, personally and professionally, was to... when I listen to someone's body or energy system, is to not make assumptions, to not go, well, I'm over the heart, so maybe there's some heartbreak. It's like, but that could be coming from their lower back, which happens to be trauma from their mom, or so, so, but the body is definitely holding wisdom and information. And so that's my first protocol, because it makes the most sense to me.
Well, and also you have the capacity to feel in an empathetic and sympathetic way other people's physical shit.
Yeah. I mean, people's bodies talk to me. Yeah. Weird shit happens. Like an early session all those years ago, I'm listening to this guy's body, kind of listen with my hands like stethoscopes. And actually, I don't even know if this was his body, but I felt like maybe his father was present. And I'm not, what are the people that do that? Like psychic or medium. I'm not a medium. And it was so strong. And I try to always trust my intuition.
Yeah.
And so I said to him, and this might be a little odd, but I feel like your dad is here. He was laying on his back with his arms at his side. Yeah. And he opened his eyes and looked at me. And then he lifted his arm. And there was a tattoo on the back of his arm that said like dad with a heart or something. And he said, my dad sent me here. He died about 6 months ago.
Oh my God.
He said, I feel like he pointed me to your website.
Oh shit, bro.
I know. And he had this like fresh tattoo of dad.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, fuck. And then we went on to do the work, and he was into the work because his dad was behind it and he was close to his dad and blah, 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 blah. And I think
that's beautiful and like super humbling and totally amazing. And
so anyway, in a way that story didn't illustrate my point, but it's still cool.
I think it did though.
Did it?
I think it was very much the intuitive nature of this work.
Yeah.
Right. And it's part of the reason that I have to push myself through whenever I'm talking to a new person about Kink Doula stuff. And I'm still at the apologetic stage. I was talking to someone the other day, and I still said, you know what, this might be weird. I'm sorry. This just popped into my head. And they were just like, just say. I was like, I know. I'm terrified of being weird or saying something that's way off base or that has nothing to do with what your actual needs are. But I'm about to tell you about yourself. And so far, I have not had anyone look at me and be like, what the fuck are you on about? This doesn't make any sense.
I am so surprised. It reminds me of a bone I have to pick with you.
Yes.
You often say...
Bone picker.
That you are not woo. You are so woo.
I fucking hate it though.
Like you were talking.
I feel like you have to be deliberately woo to do the woo. Like if woo just comes and farts in your face.
No, that is actual woo though. You know what I mean? The rest of it is playing at it. You've seen that one of my, I think I told you this when we were in the Lake District, one of my favorite memes that goes around says something about, you get all these witches that are like, oh, I must get the eye of toad and the dried basil and the leaf from this rare plant or whatever to do magic. And that is a way to do magic. Right. You can call on those energies or whatever. And also, the meme goes, or you can just pop a sigil on a Pop-Tart and have it for breakfast. Yeah. Like woo, a lot of woo isn't as mystical, magical as it's portrayed. It can be. And I like a little bit of both myself, you know, like, and I'm sure you do. I'm sure, like, if you had somebody come to you as a kink doula and your intuition told you they actually need a ritual, we actually need to light a candle and call in the 4 directions.
Creating ritual is certainly like a part of something that I do when talking to people about DS stuff, right? Because a lot of people are like, I don't know what to do.
Right.
And sometimes building from the outside in is helpful for some folks.
Precisely.
Right. And so I can say, okay, here's a little thing you can do, right? Like my first dominant, whenever I would go to his house, I had 15 minutes where once I arrived, I was to just stay in the vestibule, like kneeling or sitting or whatever, and meditate upon my service. And I was like, whatever the fuck. For me, that did not work. I was like, you're wasting my fucking time. I have ironing to do. I have all the shit you've given me to do, and now I'm 15 minutes sitting here staring at my fucking toes. It was not helpful for me, but it was what he had decided his protocol was.
Right.
And what I tell people is find the protocol that actually works for both of you. Right. Do not impose, because you can make your slave, your submissive, do stuff, but that's not actually helpful. But you're right, like ritual and protocol and all of those things and the gathering of the herbs and all of that, I know is a part of focusing your energy.
Precisely.
So now I'm focusing my energy on these leaves. My energy is now in the leaves, whatever else.
And the leaves mean this to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas I just tend to be like a energy vomiting dragon. And I'm just like, ah, ah. Whew, I'm done. Thank you. That was my spell. There it was.
But see, this is the thing. You are almost more woo because you don't even need it, because it comes from within.
I guess.
See?
Yay.
So maybe we need a different term than woo. You know, like I use the term spiritual, but I always feel a bit wanky when I use it.
I think I go, you know what I like the most is spooky.
Yeah, I like spooky.
I'm one of the spooky kids. That actually resonates for me.
I like that.
Because spooky is actually delightful scariness.
Is it delightful? I didn't know that.
Like if you go to a haunted, like here's one example. It's like, oh, we're going to tell spooky stories.
Right.
Right. A spooky story is not designed to actually keep you up at night. It's designed to give you that little shiver of thrill.
Right.
You know,
so not scary.
Right.
Spooky.
Spooky is a step back.
So hair tingling, which is a yummy feeling.
Exactly. So the sort of spookiness of like you and your partner walk into the room at the same time wearing the same shirt and you haven't planned it. Cool, that's a little spooky. It's a little weird, it's a little eerie, the other word I enjoy is the actual original meaning of weird.
Oh, me too.
Right?
WYRD.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
The Weird Sisters, right?
Yeah.
Like, I love that. I've always identified as a weirdo.
Yeah.
I love being weird. And I'm like, let's take that word back to the origin, which is magical and mystical, but in a way that's a little bit sort of like, you know what, watch yourself.
Right. That's the one for me too.
And so I'm feeling that. So I will accept those. I will receive weird.
I will just say you're weird, WYRD.
I will receive spooky.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think those are in alignment with where I am right now.
And really, ultimately what we're saying is you are deeply intuitive and in tune.
Yes, I will. I have to, again, take a deep breath and say, okay, yes, this is who I am.
I tell you something, you say that you're like prefacing, when you're talking to clients, you're prefacing what you're saying. Like, I don't know if this was really.
Yes.
I had another client, this was also a few years ago, who I've got my hands on his body. I'm listening for whatever it was that he came there for. I can't remember right now. And this is going to sound weird, isn't even the word. I felt like there were 2 dragons either side of him, like one either side. And I was like, I kept closing my eyes and tuning in and coming back out, tuning in. And finally I said, you know, this is going to sound mad. Like, you're going to just get up and leave because I'm totally mad. I said, but I feel like you've got like a dragon either side of you. Oh, yeah, those are my dragons. Like, he knew about them.
Oh, yeah, those are my dragons.
He knew about them. He just had this either side, this very powerful energy. And I was so freaked out.
Okay, here's the thing. Why not mention that? I mean, but I guess maybe this was him knowing that you knew what the fuck you were fucking doing, right?
I guess it was the first session. I mean, I was just like, I'm pretty sure there's some dragons here.
That's spooky as fuck,
and
man.
he knew. And Interestingly,
Oh my God.
I know. And I was still really learning what I was picking up at the time. And I can't remember how we ended up, but he ended up having a session with my tutor, mentor, intuitive person, but at my house. And we hadn't told her. And she started, I just said I needed help with this client. And she came in and she went, oh, can you get your dragons to back off? I'm trying to do some work here. He and I looked at each other and we looked at her. And she was like, yeah, there's dragons.
What the fuck?
Yeah, he had dragons.
I want dragons.
Right?
What? She said after she has hung out with Ganesha a couple times.
And a hyena.
The hyena is not... She's great. She's great. We love her. Yay, Bubbles. Awesome.
Well, she brought wisdom to you.
Yes.
So
yes.
So we love her. And see, and this brings me... I'm going to swing it back to...
There you go. Inner work.
Is about knowing your parts as well, isn't it? And loving your parts. And God knows we do a lot of that because we have parts that are... You and I know that we have parts that like don't feel enough and want to curl up in a ball and pull the duvet over her head and are also like, fuck me, I just did a great thing.
Yes.
Like you were nervous on Saturday before you taught the thing and afterwards you're like, oh, I taught the thing.
But convince me that it was actually any good. That will take another couple of years. It doesn't matter that, no, it's terrible.
Oh, stop it.
Someone just, had messaged me earlier today and said, well, how did it go? And I was like, I think it was okay.
It was fucking awesome. I was there.
This is part of it is the performer is that you are always honing the performance. You're always like, well, it could be more this. Well, it could be more that. Well, I could have whatever. But the reality is I really gave myself the opportunity to be as present in that room with those folks who had shown up that day as I possibly could.
And you were for like 7 hours.
And this is the thing. I guess I don't see it as a feat because it's just my thing, and anyone else who teaches is like, you just like got up there and talked and did the thing all day.
And opened people's minds and gave people permission and expanded their thinking about what's okay to explore and play with and how they have sex and how they love. Like,
I mean, there's British people crying. Okay. Like that's a lot.
Exactly. What more proof do you want, woman? Everyone in that room was mesmerized for the whole 7 hours.
Yeah.
Not one person yawned or looked bored or fell asleep apart from Georg, and he doesn't count.
He doesn't count. Also, that's just how he is.
Right.
Like he shuts down. He looks like he's not doing anything.
But he was present.
Yes,
when
definitely.
questions were asked or when he had something to contribute, he was absolutely there 100%.
Thankfully, I know him and I'm able to just be like, fine, whatever, you're doing a thing.
But the people that came to see you especially
Correct.
were mesmerized.
And also, the reality is that the messaging that I have about if you don't have 8 PowerPoint presentations and you don't have everything written out, then you are not really doing the real shit is entirely capitalist, corporate BS. It has nothing
and
to
very
do.
American.
Yeah.
Like that wouldn't happen here.
It has nothing to do with what is actually the purpose of what we're calling an intensive, which is to be intensively present, which in my opinion, I'm sorry, and I know that there are people who do need that support. It's absolutely their strong place, right? My strong place is literally jumping out of the airplane and going, at some point the parachute will appear.
Yeah.
Or at some point the ground will be a big squishy squishmallow and I will land on that.
But I think what you don't realize is you knew roughly your kind of beginning, middle, and end.
Right.
So much so, you had handouts.
Right. I mean, yes.
So you knew I got to get to this stepping stone and that stepping stone
Right.
and this stepping stone. And so I have to talk a little bit about this so that makes sense.
Yes.
So then I can tell them this thing. So then that.
Yes.
And every single thing that you talked about, you illustrated with many real life experiences that you had that brought it to life. So like, I don't see that there's any more you could have done that was... there's
right.
nothing missing.
And it was interesting because one of the things that Todd said that I was like, oh, it worked, is that I would like make a point about self-assessment and negotiation and then use an illustrative thing. And then a couple of hours later be like, remember that thing I said, here's another place where this is important and it works. Essentially saying the same thing again. But the reality is I know as a teacher, you need to hit people with knowledge 3 to 5 times
Right.
before they'll have a shot at it sinking in. But the reality is I'm not going to repeat it the same way 5 times. I will use 3 different anecdotes and say it 5 different ways.
Right.
And then people will say, oh, that's why you need to know what the fuck you want.
Right.
Not just because it looks good on paper, but because it can help you in the following ways. Here's how it helped her. And then people start to, because everyone wants to relate, right? Like that's a human thing. Then they start to look at their stories, which is why I think storytelling is so vital to teaching.
Right.
Because people instantly start going through their lives. And that's a way for you to anchor your point to someone else's actual lived experience in real time.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, that's fucking, you want to talk about like alchemy, that's magic, because that person has then stepped into their own healing in that moment, right?
You personalized
it.
Yeah.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it is fucking awesome.
And I was like, oh, I did that. Yay. And someone noticed. And I was like, okay, good. Yay.
Yeah. I wish you could give yourself like 20 gold stars for Saturday.
I'm trying. I'm working on it.
I can tell you that English people that show up to kink events are not looking for a PowerPoint. I think that comes out of because a lot of American sex educators or kink educators, as far as I can tell, teach at like universities and places like that.
Correct.
And so they have their little PowerPoints and they do a little thing.
Yes.
But it's not a thing here.
No. And it really isn't a thing anywhere, because the time that I almost talked myself out of it and sat down to write a speech was when I was invited to ASECT, which is the American Association of Sexuality, ASS, educators and therapists. Mm-hmm. It's a group and people, they're like, we're going to certify people in this thing. And so you have to get points and you have to do all this shit. And they invited me to keynote at an event. And I was like, holy shit, this is a big fucking deal. Because it's therapists and it's people with many letters after their name. And I said, you realize I am not certified in, I don't know anything. I don't even legally have a high school diploma, which is because I failed gym, but that's another story.
You failed gym.
I did. Senior year, I was like, I'm not fucking going to gym. I'm already in college. I don't care.
Right.
So absolutely. But they said, no, your experience and who you are in the world as a woman of color, as a thought leader in this subculture, we absolutely want to hear from you. And I spent 7 months tormenting myself, saying, you better write that speech. There's no way you are going to walk up in front of 1,000 a ballroom full of therapists and just pull that out of your ass. Who the fuck do you think you are? Thankfully, who the fuck I thought I was too busy and too crazy with the rest of my life to actually do that. And so I did. I literally looked at my watch. I was like, what are the 3 things I want to say to these motherfuckers? I want to say, first of all, thank you for not pathologizing us anymore, because the changes to the DSM had just started rolling out. And so kink and BDSM as a part of your life had been depathologized. And I also said, and stop making us talk about it when you don't fucking know what the fuck it is. We're not here to educate you. Get your education.
Right.
You educate yourselves about so many other things, about queerness, about cultural issues. Add this to the list. You need to know.
Yep.
There's not 2 or 3 of us. There's millions of us.
Yep. Your neighbors and your bosses and your friends.
And then the last thing I wanted to say was BDSM as harm reduction has value. And you need to have this in your wheelhouse, because you might have clients who are self-harming. You might have clients who are in abusive relationship after abusive relationship. And maybe what they're seeking actually is that type of pain and that type of suffering, and they're looking for it the wrong way. And you don't even know how to steer them into that to even see if maybe that would help them.
Right.
And I just opened my mouth, and 45 minutes later, I walked off the stage, and it took me 4.5 hours to get back to my room upstairs, because first of all, half of the ballroom got in line to wait to talk to me.
Right.
And then as I finally got out of the ballroom, then there were groups of people just running and going, there she is. They were like, oh my God, was this recorded? Because we need to. And then other people who hadn't been in that session were like, I heard you did this session. What did you say? People are freaking out. And then this was the miraculous part. Then this one therapist came up to me and he said, I just saw your speech. I have a gift I need to give you. And he pulls out this little tiny box, and it looks like, those sort of cheesy gifts that you get from the Chinese dollar store.
Yeah.
And it's this little box of whatever, and it's some sort of sculpture. It says sculpture on the outside. And I open it, and I'm like, my breath is sucked away, because it's a tiny glass Ganesha. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Why are you giving me this? And he said, and I was like, stop. And he's Southeast Asian. And I was like, you need to stop. And I pull up my dress and pull down my fucking tights so I can show him my tattoo. I'm like, and he's like, and I'm like, we're like, oh my God, having this whole thing. And like, that was like, to me, my higher power going, yeah, bitch.
Right.
Pay attention. This is how it's fucking done.
Have it.
Yeah. Oh my God.
This is the thing, like, you've been walking these paths for decades. You've been involved personally and professionally in the kink world, sexuality world, whatever, for what, 3 decades?
Almost, yeah.
I mean, you've got a performance background as well, so you know how to speak, you know how to tell a story, you know what I mean? And you're like the smartest person I know. So you know how to take all those puzzle pieces of experience and performance and put them together, and you're a rock star. That's all.
I'm receiving it. I'm accepting it. Thank you very much.
And the world needs you. The world needs what you bring.
Well, the world also needs what you're bringing, and I'm not sure what it's going to be yet. But what's fascinating to me is that when I first met you, you were like, oh, I'm working with men for the thing. I'm like, oh, great. Men get more cool shit. Good for them. But then I started thinking about it and I said, no, but there's so much pain and so much wounding and so much sorrow that is hidden and tucked and baked into what it means to be a man in current society. There's so much toxicity. And I realized for myself, if there's no one bringing the softness and helping people to dig into themselves as you do, how can we expect anyone to get better?
That's it.
Like, what is that? What is the healing going to be for them?
I know the other day Todd was asked to coach a room. It was virtual, but to coach a room of women around how the patriarchy is affecting them in the boardroom or something like that. Anyway, so he was talking about how dare I go in to do this thing and why had he been asked, whatever. And so he held it really well. But separately to that, I was saying the thing with patriarchy is not men, it's a system.
Right.
And men are hurt by it also.
Absolutely.
And so something, when I first started doing this work, I worked with everyone, every gender going, every whatever. And because I genuinely wanted to help. But Barbara Carellis,
that bitch,
that woman, looked at me one day and she was asking the group, who do you want to work with? And some people were going, I'm going to work with, trans this.
Right, get your perfect client.
Right. And I went, I want to work with everyone. I want to work with anyone who wants to come, who feels drawn to me for help. And she looked me dead in the eye and went, everyone is not a demographic. And I was like, ooh, like I've never seen Barbara use that voice with me before. Like, shit. And it took years for that to sink in. And then it did sink in. And then I thought, okay, where does my magic lie? If I'm really honest, it was with men. It's like, I can help women, but I overprotect them. I collude with them too much. Like my mastery isn't there.
Yeah.
It just isn't.
Yeah.
So I can help, but I'm not magical there.
But it's like an orientation, isn't it? Your magical orientation leans into that group of people.
I really just think, and this will sound weird, but I think you'll get it. It's spooky. I think I've done this work for lifetimes.
Yeah.
And I think I'm just like, whatever it is, I'm like wired or made, or whatever deity made me to come and do this particular work. And for whatever reason, I'm fine-tuned to men. And at the beginning of the pandemic, and I wasn't seeing clients, and I had all this like backed up energy, client energy. My mentor said to me, why don't you just do some transmissions? Like, just transmit the energy and put on Facebook and say you're going to transmit it. I was like, well, it's a little weird, but it's got to go somewhere. So let me try it.
Yeah. So
I just put out a thing. I said, 4 till 4:15, I'm going to transmit some sexual alchemy energy. And she said she was going to tune in. So I do the thing. I transmit the energy. I feel much better afterwards.
Wonderful.
And then she messaged me afterwards. She goes, this is really weird. She said, you are definitely fine-tuned for the masculine. She said, I tried to tune in and it wasn't, I could feel it a bit. She said, but that's like, if I'm the transmitter, the receivers are men. And they can be trans men. I don't think it's not it's not cis men.
It is an orientation. It is
who do you think you are? Yeah. And she said she thought that's where the energy would go. And I wasn't intending that. I was just transmitting to whoever wanted any.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, that does feel right. Because when I'm with the man, like, eyes closed, I can go, yes, this is what's going on. Let's do that, tweak this, and sort it out with its women. And they're telling me this stuff. I'm like, I know that's terrible, right? and couples are not my jam. Like because usually I can see what's going on with one of them and I just want to pull them up on it and it's not going to help the dynamic,
right.
you know? And so
you need to really be present for both.
I think working with couples, it's got to be the thing that you were fine-tuned to do or something, or you have to love it. I think there's some people that love it, but for me, no. No. I don't know if whatever new spokes to my wheel might be more group work and therefore people of all genders.
What are you leaning into now? I know that you are experimenting and you are leaving room. What have you discovered since you have opened up that space?
The only thing that I know, and it's still not 100% in form, is Todd and a guy named Rob, who was here last week and is going to be on the next... Rob and Todd. He's going to be on the next podcast. So Rob came to visit us, like, I think in January. Rob and Todd knew each other from the coaching world and both felt drawn to do something else together. And Rob had just learned to do fire walks, but he was also a coach and he's kind of corporate-y, whatever. Anyway, Rob came and the three of us sat in the lounge downstairs, and what emerged was kind of Todd and I doing a sort of session with Rob where what was birthed was the fire shaman. He's a fire shaman. He didn't know it. And it was this huge piece of work. It was kind of a bit how I work with the body and a bit how Todd works with magic. And so the three of us have been exploring what we might run together. And so there's something with the two of them that might happen that we're going to run. I can't remember if we got a date. It might be October, so we spent a weekend together. The weekend before you came. Oh, cool. Actually. Yeah. This is my summer of love, right? So Rob was the first one. So he came and each of us took a turn in the middle with the other two working on them. Yeah. And bringing their magic and seeing what evolved, and like all sorts of stuff was evolved. Bits of me were expanded. Todd had a piece of like a ritual he needed to do a thing. And then Rob had all sorts of expansion go on. It was just like, it was like a sexual alchemy, Todd's magic, Rob's fire shaman thing, and the three of us were grown from it. Yeah. So the next thing we're going to do is invite 3 people to come and spend a day with us in an experiment to see what happens. Where we're thinking what might happen is each of the 3 people will get a turn in the middle, and we all work our magic on them on whatever it is they bring that needs to be worked with or wants to be worked on. Whoa. Yeah.
Like, I want to do middle of the magic thing with this stuff.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll do that in December. You don't have to pop down here.
Oh, right.
Yeah. There might be a way. We'll get Rob up to the Lake District or something.
I was about to say, it's fun. I was like, come and hang out in this mansion for a day.
Oh, must we? Oh, no. That's so horrible. But that's like the only thing I know that's coming is that the 3 of us feel something there, and we're going to do this thing for 3 people. But we've talked a lot about how we might take that into companies. We don't have any answers yet, though.
Yes.
That's the only thing. That's like a half a spoke. That's not even a full spoke in the wheel. And the rest, I don't know. I mean, we've got guests every week, apart from 2 weeks in August. We've got guests every week through the end of August, and everyone's bringing their magic. Like I said, did I ever say this on the podcast, or was I saying it to you earlier? I can't remember.
Say it again.
But basically, I feel like all the people coming are people that I love and respect, that are big and powerful in their own world. We have a friendship and there's a colleagueship in there as well. And so there's conversations that I feel are opening me up, opening Todd up, and something's coming. And I just don't know what it is. I will keep doing the sexual alchemy work.
It is a thing. As I mentioned to you, one of the people I was talking to for the Kink Doula thing had a huge turn in their career, which is great because their career is like helping the world be less shitty.
Great.
And so I was like, great, this is amazing that you are also stepping into your power and getting paid as several minorities under the umbrella under which this person falls to talk about shit that's important for us, for those of us who are light workers and craving justice and craving equality and craving peace. Like the fact that message is now being underwritten by people with fat wallets was very heartening to me. Yeah. Right. And so part of me is wondering if this restlessness that so many of us are feeling is part of that. And I think and this is a case where the worse things get, there's going to be people who are called to say, okay, fine, now this is the time.
Right.
And part of my life pattern has been, I do very well when things are falling apart. Like
Same.
every stock market crash, every fucking recession, I'm always at the point where like shit is good.
Yeah.
Where I have a stable job, where I have a good place I'm living, where my rent control is in place. Always, everything else is falling apart and burning.
Yeah. But I would say it's something of a spooky or healer nature. That's when people need you.
Yeah.
That's when they need you.
Yeah. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Is that if you need to be the light for the folks who are flailing.
Yeah, and the ones that hold them and comfort them or heal them or help them look at a different perspective of what's going on. That's what you do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oof. And I think that there definitely is I hate to be sort of like Moon is in the 7th house and Jupiter aligns with Mars right now, but something is going on. Yeah, well, here's the thing that I've been hesitating to say because I feel like it sounds. I think some people will totally get it and they'll be on board, and some people will be like, "What do you know?" And that's a bit wanky. So, well, I might have been that person.
It's a bit wanky,
wanky. I think you're right about this movement, and I think there's various movements of a similar nature.
Yeah,
but one of them is the thing that Todd's going through, which then is having a knock-on effect to me, which is what. The only word I have for it is awakening. I think people are awakening more to the true nature, to their power, to coming out of the dream state of power over and into the reality of power with, like something of that. And I think there's many, many, many layers of it. Some of it is just where we lose a few ego positions that have held us back.
Right.
And some of it where selfhood falls away. Todd is in the selfhood falling away place of it. And some of my clients are.
Yeah.
There's something in me ancient that's gone, that is what I do. I almost can't look in your eyes when I say this bit, in part because I'm waiting for you to roll them, but in part, in part because the thing is, I don't even know if I can put this in words, but I've said for 1,000 years.
Just babble.
When I look into my clients' eyes, my intention is to draw out who they really are. And what I mean by that is the essence of them that is beyond and before all the shame and conditioning and being told they're not enough and all the human shit that gets dumped on them. And that is also awakening. That is awakening to who you really are. And what we really are is beyond human.
Yeah.
However whether that's soul or consciousness or oneness or whatever your language is.
Beyond the electrified bag of meat.
And what I'm realizing is now, like I think that was happening with guys, and they would up-level somewhat. And I don't mean that hierarchically. I just mean for themselves and how they knew themselves, their self-awareness, right? But now it feels like it's actually doing some awakening on the deeper level. Todd says this is like what's happening with him. He thinks started 15 years ago when we got together. I mean, he's done a fuck ton of work too himself, like fuck ton. But there's something in that. As I speak about it, I get like all my hairs on my body stand up. Something in me. And I almost feel like I'm not awakened. I think I'm awakened in my work. Like once I'm in the treatment room with someone.
You can be
awakened in areas. Georg is awakened in music.
Yes.
Right. Absolutely. But he might not be awakened in cooking.
The fucking refrigerator?
Right. Exactly.
Finding shit in the fridge.
But this is it. I think many people are awakened in one or two or some areas and not in others. And that's fine. We don't all have to awaken.
No, but this is, to me, the reason that being involved in a relationship with someone is powerful and important. And it's part of the reason I think that I had such a drought of people intimately connected to me is because I needed to be completely stored up with all the relationship energy I could possibly muster because this motherfucker was going to come and tax my shit.
Yeah.
And give me the room to do so. Right. Because if someone like Georg wasn't able to financially support me, for example, and I had to come from work.
Oh my God.
And deal with that shit.
Your
Are you
relationship
kidding?
would never work.
It would never work.
Ever.
And so his karma got him to the place where he's not raking in $1 million per fucking piece that he writes, but he has enough money so that between the two of us living nice lives, I can be there entirely for him and entirely for myself.
Right.
And this is the thing I had to learn because people were constantly saying to me, How do you cope with it? How do you deal with it? How do you handle it? Aren't you exhausted? And I was like, I'm exhausted because you're asking me if I'm exhausted. Should I be exhausted? I'm not exhausted, but maybe I should be. And then I had a conversation with like my spiritual mom who was like, you know, she was I need to like, and she did the thing that you do. And she said to me, and maybe I'll say it wrong, I don't know, but something about, I guess, the crown chakra is supposed to be like where you receive energy from the cosmos.
Yes.
I guess.
Yeah.
Is that the thing?
Yeah.
She's like, you are putting out. She's like, you are outputting all the time. She's like, I've never seen this.
Yeah.
She's like, no wonder because Garrick and I were going through whatever. And she was like, and then she's like, you're fine, actually. She's like, it's weird that you're fine. Why are you fine?
Because you were getting the support from underneath.
Right.
That's why.
So I can tell people I'm fine and leave me alone. And I actually don't need to like take a bath and get a massage. I'm just living my fucking life.
Right.
You know, the idea that everyone needs the same type of psychological, emotional, and spiritual support. And I started to realize it's not that my needs are not being met. It's that it's not a need.
Right.
I actually don't need him to do that because I'm actually very solid in that part of myself that helps him.
Yes, I'm clapping because also the thing that you said, you alluded to a minute ago is that each of you individually on your journeys prior to meeting each other had done a lot of inner work.
Yes.
Dare I say.
Yeah.
You had done a lot of life's kicked me in the nuts. What am I going to do with that? Who do I want to be? How am I going to deal with the psychological stuff? What about the brain hamsters?
Yeah.
Georg had all his trauma, you know, you had your trauma, and both of you had worked on that stuff. It's not that when you come together, you have to be perfectly and you've ironed all your shit out. We're never going to do that. It's that you get to a place where you have enough self-awareness and self-respect to say, I am ready for this relationship.
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. No, but dude, this is so real. And it's so hard to explain to people because everyone wants to worry about you. Everyone wants to think whatever. And I'm like, it is stressful. It's hard. It's hard being in a relationship with him. It is not easy. And I would not trade any second of it at all because I was literally born for this.
Got chills all over.
Like when I look at how perfectly my life experience fits in with what his needs are, and the fact that my callus points, the places where I'm able to say, fuck off, this is not mine to grab. I'm sorry, this is your problem. I'll help you, but I'm not absorbing this. The fact that both of us can do that. The fact that like when we first started our relationship, I was blunt as hell with him. I said things to him I had never said to a sexual partner before.
Right.
And his response was, okay, thanks for letting me know. I will close my mouth a little bit more and not jam my tongue down your throat when we're kissing. I'm like, just back off. Just a little softer, a little, not so, But like, I had never had the guts to just be so frank previously.
Right.
Because I was afraid that it would, you know, I'm sure you don't know anything about the fragility of the male ego.
What? No.
But it's not that he's not fragile, but he's just not fragile there.
Right.
He's not fragile in the places where he needs and wants to grow and learn and change.
And that is a huge point, isn't it? Because
Yes.
And it's okay to be fragile, but then get help for that part. Get help for that part. Get support. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's often where some of the juicy transformation takes place, but where we carry that shit around for decades because it's the most terrifying parts, isn't it? But I think you and Georg both did, and Todd and I too, a lot of work to be ready for the relationship that we now have. Yeah. For my part was I had to be happy without a relationship genuinely before he came along. And it took some work. And I was assisting a kind of neo-tantra teacher at the time, and she was running a lot of couple stuff. And I was there as a single person, and ouchie, and ooh, it hurt, and the couples were showing up for each other, and I was like, oh, no one showing up for me, and, you know, all that kind of thing. And then one day, I was assisting, it was the first day, and she was going around the room, and each couple was saying why they were there, and each individual. And I found myself, oh, that's lovely, oh, that's great, oh, that's lovely. And it got around to me, I was like, oh, I'm okay, I'm all right being on my own in this couples workshop. It was the first time, it was just such a light bulb moment. And you just think, within days, Todd Roach walked into my life. I'm not kidding you. It had to be a genuine feeling, though. Once I was like, I don't need it, there he was.
I will tell you, once I gave the ultimatum to the universe, I said, God, you know what? I'm out of here if you don't do this thing. But you know what? I 103% knew that was not going to happen. It was just the beginning of my letting go.
Right.
It was honestly
almost the same thing, right?
My saying, you know what? I shot my shot. I did the very best I could. I felt like I did really good work. And I had done my own personal process to realize that the idea that I had that I could make a living in the BDSM world teaching other kinky folks about BDSM was completely false because no one was doing it.
Right.
I looked around and I thought people were doing it. And then when I sat and I analyzed it and I opened my pattern recognition eye, I saw that all of those people that I was trying to model myself after had partners with quote unquote day jobs.
Right.
All of them had someone supporting them.
Interesting.
Of that cohort of like the 12 or 14 or so people I was looking at, every single one of them had a partner who was supporting them.
Wow.
And I was like, I am attempting the impossible. This is a side gig.
Yeah.
The way the community is structured, I can't do this.
Right. And it's not because you're not enough or you're a failure.
No. And I was like, okay,
that's
great.
the structure.
Thank you. I'm out. I'm done. Fuck this. Unless, of course, lol. And then I went about my business and I was like, no. I had 3 weeks until the end of the month. And then I was going to go and start poking around Wells Fargo and Bank of America, see if I could weasel my way into some corporate personal assistant work because that's easy for me as a sub and a slave, right? Like it's a no-brainer.
Right.
I get to boss around executives, basically. Yeah. I'm like, this is my job.
And take care of them. Which, have we, I looked at the wrong number. I thought we'd been going for 2 hours. But no, it's an hour.
But it is an hour.
Okay, so how do we wind this up? Thank
What
you.
the fuck are you doing with your life?
How
can people talk to you if they want to talk to you?
Okay, so my website is RebeccaLowrie.com or sexualalchemy.com, and I'm all over the social medias.
RebeccaLowrie.
Yes.
Lowrie.
Oh my God, no one ever gets that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Where can people find you, Kink Doula?
KinkDoula.com. Don't go to Molina.com right now because it's apparently been hacked once again by Russian bots.
Oh my God.
I don't know what the fuck is going on with that. And yeah, if you are interested at all in what I'm offering for Kink Doula and you are thinking that you would like to sign up, I have a 15-minute consultation session available through Kink Doula. You will find it. There's a link there. You can go on Calendly and find 15 minutes that we can chat and we can see if that's something that would work out for us.
Amazing.
And stay tuned because I think that like, I don't know where it is, but I'm like, someday I'm going to figure out what we're going to do.
Oh, I know.
Like, I know what that thing is. I was like, it's going to be a thing. I was like, I'm not even going to worry about it.
There's going to be things.
There's going to be the point we're just going to be like, holy shit. Yes, that's fucking it.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait. And I also want to say that my website, I made the front page like as if I kind of knew where I was going, but then the rest of the website is still very sexual alchemy. So, because I'm doing a bit of both.
Yeah.
So yeah, come do some sexual alchemy.
Yeah. If you are a male identified person who needs to alchemize, I can't recommend personally, but I can recommend vicariously as my owner and husband has worked with Rebecca very beautifully over the years. So there's my endorsement.
Thank you. And I attended a Kink Doula workshop on Saturday, and I can tell you, I'm still reeling from it. It was amazing.
You attended the first Kink Doula retreat.
It was amazing.
Intensive. It wasn't a retreat. It was an intensive.
Yeah. Thank you. I think in a minute, I'm just going to hit stop. Because we're going to keep talking.
I know. I love you.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye. You've been listening to All That and Mo. Thanks so much for spending your precious, precious time with me today. My podcast is produced by Cody Crabb. Theme music by Georg Friedrich Haas, as performed by Marcus Weiss. And I look forward to spending time with you again really soon.